Well, my name is Dale Suggs. I am the director of the Beloved Compassion Network, and we are a new nonprofit, an educational nonprofit, and our entire mission is helping people cultivate compassion for themselves and others. And we hope to bring that not only to individuals, but also to organizations, churches, nonprofits, maybe even for-profit businesses who are interested in the ethos, the culture of their organization, be one of compassion. And that was really the original vision of the network, that we would have a network of organizations supporting one another in literally becoming schools of compassion. Glad you're here today as we do 1 hour on self-compassion. We do have some of our facilitators with us here today within the Zoom space. And I'm thankful that they are here. Let me see if I can see them all. I'm just going to call them out by the way I see them: Jeanette Christian, Shelley Suggs, Alan Christian, Nancy Fowler. Those are my friends who are trained facilitators, which is to say that they are ready to teach this material as well. And it's not really teaching, it's more leading an experience that cultivates compassion. This journey into self-compassion is really a glimpse, part one of a larger practice that cultivates compassion for self and others. This practice is the foundation of our work as Beloved Compassion Network. The practice is simply called the Compassion Practice. The Compassion Practice was developed by Frank Rogers Jr. with the support of Andy Dreitzer and Mark Iaconelli, and was introduced in 2 books. The first one is what we lovingly call the Blue Book. It's entitled Practicing Compassion by Frank Rogers Jr. And then what we lovingly call the White Book, Compassion in Practice by Compassion in Practice, the Way of Jesus. Let me get those up on the screen so that you can see them and be able to take down any information that you might want to take down as we go along. The Blue Book, Frank's first book, approaches the compassion practice from a multi-faith, multi-philosophical, multi-science perspective. The White Book, as advertised on the cover, ties the compassion practice to the life and teachings of Jesus. We were first introduced to the Blue Book, the broader perspective, way back in 2014, I believe. And we have been growing in it as we go along. And I want to share with you that the first 6 words of the Blue Book really capture and tell the underlying story of the entire compassion practice. The first 6 words are these: compassion is the heartbeat of humanity. The compassion practice, let me stop share here. Compassion practice begins with the basic assumption that each of us has a compassionate core deep within. And at our core, we are fundamentally compassionate people. And that's all people. And so what follows those 6 words is a guide to a structured, contemplative, and yet very real world experience practice to cultivate compassion for oneself and others, even difficult others. Even compassion when that difficult other actually is ourselves. So let me begin with a little story. It begins last September. You may remember last September and what was going on in the world, the craziness that we had been living through and really still are living through as a nation, as a world. And I had some extreme encounters around September, and because I believe people had finally reached the point where their normal coping skills weren't functioning well anymore. In fact, many of those coping skills had been taken away from us, hadn't they? I mean, often we deal with stress by going out into nature or being around people that we love, or talking around the water cooler, or going out to dinner with friends, or playing cards deep into the night. These connections, these ways of being with other people and releasing stress had all been taken away from us as we found ourselves in house arrest. And we had already been in house arrest at that point. For about, at that point, it was only like 5 months, but it was already beginning to overwhelm our ability to cope. And so what I was discovering is that people, rather than moving through their emotions, moving forward in dealing with their stress, they were really just kind of stuffing it down, kind of piling it one upon the other. And Frank Rogers talks about it as pushing a buoy underwater. And I don't know if you've ever pushed a buoy underwater, but the farther you push it, the far more you push it down, the more energy, potential energy it has to spring forward up in the air, creating water and sometimes just hitting you in the face. Well, one of those buoys hit me in the face in early September of last year. I was in a conversation with a young man named Steve, and he was not the first person that week who had lost it with me in a Zoom conversation, but this was by far the most dramatic. Somehow we knew how to push each other's buttons, maybe because we know each other pretty well. And the conversation slowly deteriorated into kind of an emotional fray, each of us comparing our pain to one another as if this was a pain contest at that point in life and the COVID experience. And finally, we just kind of hung up on each other. For weeks, I stewed in that anger at him. I mean, he was comparing his pain to mine. My pain certainly overshadowed his. And then I found myself sitting on the rocks at Sunset Cliffs here in San Diego, paying attention to the waves as they came in, not really pondering anything other than the size of the set coming forward and where it might break and how the plume of water might rise, how high it might be, where along the rock ledge it would be tallest. And in those moments, I was able to kind of take a breath and remember myself. And in that point of calm, realize that the issue in that conversation was not what Steve was saying to me, not his pain, but rather my reactiveness, because I had pain that longed to be healed. The compassion practice recognizes that there's a rhythm, a flow to the universe, a pulse of compassion that is beyond us and within us. And as Frank says, there's a lot of mad in the world. And I like that word mad. It speaks of anger, it speaks of hate, it speaks of emotional chaos. There is a lot of mad in our world. But there's also this underlying pulse of compassion, a rhythm, a melody, a dance of life and peace, as regular as the waves coming forward and crashing upon the rocks. And that rhythm of compassion invites us to join the dance and find healing within. So I want to pause for a moment. Made a pretty radical claim that within each of us is a core of compassion, and that there is a pulse of compassion out in the universe, this rhythm of connectedness and peace and I don't know, just expansiveness that we can take part in. I'm wondering if there's any questions about that, any thoughts about that, that you would want to share or ask. I see, I think a hand up for Elizabeth. Elizabeth, do you want to unmute and say a word? Well, that was my hand, actually. Never mind. That's great. That was my cursor. I loved it. Sorry, Elizabeth. I bet that was rather shocking for you. Well, let's move forward by being clear about what we mean when we use that word compassion. We have a very specific definition of compassion that we work with. It is a definition that comes from Frank Rogers and the first book he wrote, Practicing Compassion. And this is it. Compassion is being moved in one's depths by the pain or bliss of another and responding in ways that intend to ease their suffering and promote their flourishing. There's two things about that definition I want to point out. First is it's about being moved in our depths. Remember that compassionate core? It's a connection within our depths that connects with the pain or bliss of another, but doesn't stop there. It moves forward not only to empathize, but also to act. Moved in one's depths and responding in ways that intend to ease their suffering and promote their flourishing. Now, that's a definition that sounds like compassion for others, but that definition also speaks to our own self-compassion. I kind of rewrote it a little bit, maybe to make that more direct. Compassion, compassion is being moved in your depths by your own pain or bliss and responding in ways that intend to ease your suffering and promote your flourishing. Both are true. Both are true. And we do that work of compassion for self and others within the compassion practice in a 4-step process. The first is catching your breath, becoming grounded, like what I did on Sunset Cliffs that particular day. Then taking your pulse finding out what is going on within you, and then moving on to take the pulse of the other. What's going on within them? And once you have been grounded, once you've taken your own pulse, once you've taken their pulse, then decide what to do. Discern what action might be truly compassionate to the other and to ourselves. Now, within the area of self-compassion, that really is the first and second step. It's about catching our breath, getting grounded, and then taking our pulse. You know, this practice is somewhat unique. And it's unique because, well, it's unique because it calls us to cultivate self-compassion, not just compassion for the other. Self-compassion is necessary before and while cultivating compassion for others. It also invites the sacred into the conversation. And the compassion practice allows folks to name the sacred in whatever way speaks to them. My group knows the favorite one shared with me so far is a young woman who said sacred for her is the aroma of cookies baking in her grandmother's kitchen. That's just fabulous. And it's unique in that it recognizes that compassion is not compassion until it is put into action. So, with that stated, let's jump directly into self-compassion. That first part of the compassion practice that's so important in order to even begin moving to that second part, compassion for others. The compassion practice, let me unshare. The compassion practice in self-compassion requires a leap of faith. Now, I don't mean that in a religious sense, a demand for a blind acceptance of some religious truth. That's really not faith at all, but that's not today's discussion. Rather, the leap of faith is an invitation to try on a new perspective on the world and upon yourself and see how it fits. And this new perspective has three basic parts. First, it is the leap to try on that deep within you is a compassionate core that beats with the rhythm of compassion. Compassion is not something from the outside that you're going to learn and plant within. Rather, it is something on the inside that's already been planted within you, but longs to be cultivated. The second perspective in this leap of faith is you are capable of receiving and expressing compassion. You, because of that core within you, you have the ability to receive and express compassion. And finally, you are worthy of compassion. I know that sounds like a good place for a religious or ontological argument about the nature of what it is to be human, and we can do that sometime if you'd like. But for this afternoon, let's instead just lean into the realization that we would not have a compassionate core within us, nor would we be capable of receiving and expressing compassion if we were not worthy of compassion. In other words, our movement puts it this way: you are beloved, whether you realize it or not. Let me pause again and consider the three pieces of this perspective, this leap of faith, and see if there are any questions amongst those who are with us today. And I'm going to stop share so I can see some faces. Thoughts, questions, wonderings? I see some beautiful faces. Okay, well, you seem to be a group that's willing to try on this different way of looking at yourself and at others and see how it fits. So let's move toward something that might feel less like a background construct and more like something of a tool that you can take home with you today in order to cultivate your own self-compassion. That first tool that I would like for you to have is the invitation to breathe. Just to breathe. The grounding of connecting with our breath is the foundation of every major religion I know and every philosophical structure that includes a meditative practice. It begins with recognizing and connecting with our breath. So many different words for breath in the many languages of the world, but they all also translate as wind and spirit and even life force. When we pause and just breathe, grounding ourselves, we then become so much more able to be aware of the world around us and to be aware of the world within us. So self-compassion is possible. So that's tool number one. Tool number two is an invitation to sit in the presence of the sacred. Now, the word sit isn't quite right. The Abrahamic faiths would use the word tabernacle. It's a word that means to step aside, literally build a temporary dwelling, and spend some quiet time in the presence of the sacred. No matter how you name sacred, as a divine force, as a beloved ancestor, as the power of the ocean, or the beauty of a mountain vista, or the smell of cookies baking in your grandmother's kitchen. Spending time there is one of the most powerful things we can do to care for ourselves. The third tool I give you is a tool that you may not have considered before. It's vividly remembering. Entering in an invitation to enter into your imagination and vividly remember, specifically, remember when someone you admire or hold dear extended compassion to you. Literally, connect in your imagination with the sights, the sounds, the aromas, the taste, the sensation on your skin, where you were, what was going on in your life, to fully re-enter those moments when someone extended compassion to you. It is in remembering and savoring these moments that we discover again that we are worthy of compassion, that we are capable of receiving it, and we are capable of extending it to others. And the fourth tool I would give you, I've been working on how to say this. Within our teachings, we talk about interior movements, which can be emotions and internal voices and impulses, daydreams, bodily sensations, those parts of you that live within you that emerge, particularly in moments when you've been activated by some event around you, or maybe by a memory, or maybe by a sight or sound that connects to a point of pain or distress or trauma from the past. The fourth tool I would give you is to name those, to literally call them by name. Those emerging and activating and overwhelming emotions, internal monologues and dialogues and impulses and daydreams and sensations, those many parts of you, none of which are really your true self, which is deep within you. These many parts of you, name them. Create a little distance from them. Change your language. In English, we have this disadvantage, and we have a way of saying things in first person to be. We say, I am angry. Now, the problem with that statement is that it basically says my whole being now is angry. In fact, my entire being is anger. There is nothing going on in me right now but anger. But that's not the way it is. At any given moment in time, there are many parts within us who make up who we are, who are speaking to us. I mean, the truth is, some of you just wanted to watch football today. Part of you just wanted to watch football. Part of you wanted to take a walk out in nature. Part of you wanted to take a nice nap. Part of you was a little afraid and wondering whether this was a good place to be. And part of you wanted to be in this space to learn a little. All those parts exist within you. And what I'm suggesting is that you name them, but not by saying, I am angry, or I am sad, or I am afraid, but rather, anger is here. Sadness, I see you. Fear, welcome. Curiosity, so good to see you. To be able to create a little bit of distance from these emotions that would want to overwhelm us, and we become enmeshed with them. And as Frank Rogers says, these emotions, these activated interior movements begin to drive our bus. They begin to define our perspective on the world. They begin to define in their own way who we are, as if we are all anger, we are all sadness, but that's not the case. And if you can name them in the third person, you can create enough distance to recognize that that's not who you are deep inside. And this one who is here is really a guest who has come to bring you a gift. Anger is here, sadness, welcome, curiosity, I see you. Well, those are the 4 gifts that I would like to give you, the tools. Let me see if I can get them up so we can just see them quickly. To breathe, to sit in the presence of the sacred, to vividly remember moments when someone extended compassion to you, and to name interior movements. It's not surprising that these tools reflect the 4 foundational meditative practices within the compassion practice. They are simply these: connecting with your breath, remembering sacred moments, receiving compassion, and understanding an interior movement. Together, these meditations reveal to us that there really are 2 ways of being in the world. We can feel grounded and centered and patient and compassionate, living in rhythm with that compassionate heartbeat within us and within the universe. Or we can feel offbeat, disconnected, impulsive, and reactive. We're enmeshed in those interior movements. They begin to drive our bus. The compassion practice, these tools for self-compassion will cultivate that former state of grounded, centered, patient, and compassionate. They also will begin to heal those moments when you're offbeat, disconnected, impulsive, and reactive. Okay, we're going to pause again for a couple of questions if you have them, particularly about those 4 tools which I gave you in terms of breathing and sitting in the presence of the sacred, vivid remembrances of sacred moments receiving compassion, naming interior movements, thoughts, questions, wonderings.
I see Deborah has her hand up.
Deborah, go right ahead.
Hi, I was wondering if you could just share again about naming the interior movements. I have to apologize. My dad is in the hospital and I'm in the middle of texting with my sister, so I missed that part.
Yeah, you know, you are, this 4th tool I've given you is the most, will be the most difficult to kind of appropriate without going through the entire compassion practice curriculum experience. But you are experiencing interior movements right now. There are feelings within you having to do with your father's condition, your sister's reaction to it, your own wounds and fears deep within being exposed. You may have an impulse to just hang up the phone, pull some ice cream out of the freezer, sit and just eat in quiet. All of those are interior movements. They're parts of you who are stepping forward and calling for your attention. The gift I'm trying to give you as a tool is to name them in the 3rd person in order to create a little distance from them so that your fear about your father's condition doesn't control your entire being, so that your frustration with your sister, I'm projecting big time right now.
Actually, if you would like to do an actual, I don't know if you would call it a role play or example, I'm very happy to share that I have acid reflux over all of this, just since
Yeah,
3:30 this morning.
you
So
know, Deborah,
that
I would
internal.
love for you to hang on after the end of our time and for us to do that. I would love to do that with you, and others are welcome to join us in that. But I have a practice I want to do for the whole group, and I want to make sure that we have time to do that. And I think this practice will help with that acid reflux you've had since 3 a.m.
I just didn't want you to have to guess.
Oh, I'm just putting out an example, and what I want, the gift is to name those things in third person so that you can recognize that they're a part of you, the calling for your attention. They have a gift, something to teach you, but you need not let them envelop you, overwhelm you, drive your bus, if you will. So,
okay.
Other thoughts, questions? Well, let's do a practice together. One of those foundational meditations within the compassion practice. Remember, they were connecting with your breath, remembering sacred moments, receiving compassion, and deepening your understanding of an interior movement. And this afternoon, I would like to lead you in the practice of receiving compassion. And it's a meditative practice. Some people like to have their video on, video off, sit down, lie down, whatever works for you. We're going to do this for about 10 minutes. It's not a long practice, but I would invite you to experience it and get a sense of how these tools really can help us be compassionate to ourselves. So let me invite you to find a position in which to sit, lie down, a position in which you feel both alert and yet relaxed, restful and yet engaged. And I invite you to take your hand and place it upon your diaphragm and become aware of your breath. Notice the ebb and flow of air as your hand rises and falls. As the air moves through your body. You might want to deepen your inhale and extend your exhale, like you're singing a long, clear note. 3 or 4 breaths, deep inhale and extend your exhale. Allow yourself to fall into a rhythm of breathing that nurtures an interior settling. As you continue to breathe and settle within, allow into your awareness various moments in your life when kindness, care, or compassion was extended toward you. Of the various moments that come to you, allow one to be the focus for this meditation. Allow yourself to remember that moment. In your imagination, return to the setting where it took place. Remember where you were. Remember the circumstances in your life at the time. Remember what you were feeling, enduring, in need of. Remember the person who extended kindness or compassion to you. Deepen your connection to this moment by using your senses, and remember concrete details about the sights that were present at that moment. What sounds were present? What smells were present? What tastes were present? What sensations would you feel on your skin? Allow the gesture or presence of kindness within that person to be with you once more. Like a radiant light flowing toward and into you. Allow their compassionate energy to soak into your being. Remember the look in their eye, the expression on their face, the warmth of their presence. With each in-breath, breathe in their compassion for you. With each out breath, breathe their compassion into every tissue of your being. If it feels right, allow this person to be a portal or instrument through which the sacred source of compassion that you know might flow toward you as well. Invite that sacred presence to be with you as a healing light, a divine figure, a sacred image, a beloved ancestor, a color, a sound, or a felt sense. With each in-breath, breathe in sacred compassion. With each out-breath, breathe sacred compassion throughout your body into every cell of your being. As we prepare to surface, notice if there is an invitation for one concrete action you might take in the hours or days ahead to live more fully in the restoring power of this compassion. And now, knowing that a sacred compassion is ever sustaining you, allow yourself to surface from this meditation. Become aware once more of being in this day, of being in your own space, of being in your body. And when you are ready, open your eyes. Thank you for viewing this recording of the 1-hour masterclass on self-compassion. The meditation on receiving compassion was followed by breakout groups where the live attendees shared about their experiences. My small group reminded me of the variety of ways we have all experienced compassion in our lives. Just know that whatever surfaced for you in this meditation was exactly what you needed to surface. Over the years, we've learned to trust the practice. If you'd like to go deeper into the practice of self-compassion, I invite you to join Beloved for a 5-week seminar beginning October 4th, entitled Cultivating Self-Compassion. We will meet on Mondays, and you can choose between 10:30 a.m. and 6:30 p.m. for your session. Those are both Pacific time. And these 90-minute gatherings will lead you deeper into the 4 foundational meditations that I mentioned earlier. And I believe you will find that our time together will help you free up uncover and connect with that core of compassion that lives deep within you. If you would like to learn more about our 5-week Cultivating Compassion seminar, visit our website at belovedcompassionnetwork.org. That's all one word, belovedcompassionnetwork.org. Once there, click on What We Do and then All Events. Then you can choose the banner promoting the Cultivating Self-Compassion seminar, and you'll be taken to more information and you will find an opportunity to register. Thank you again for sharing this 1-hour masterclass in self-compassion. I hope to see you again soon.